You are listening to Upon Further Review with Phillip Jordan. What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. This is Upon Further Review. I'm your host, Phillip Jordan, in-studio host and producer of On Football. 96.9, the legend and Auburn Rider for Last Word on college football. Got a fun show planned for you guys today. We are going to begin our previews of as many teams in the Southeast for college football as we can. Going to knock out a lot of previews between now and the start of the college football season. And we're going to kick things off today with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Joe Gaither over at Bama Central will be joining me on the show today in just a few seconds. He's also host of his own show, the Joe Gaither Show. And if you're a Chicago Bears fan, you check him out on another podcast, Believe in Monsters. So plenty of football content there with Joe. We're also going to get into basketball too as well. Mark Sears coming back, withdrawing from the NBA draft. We will get into that, the importance of that decision with the Alabama basketball team and Nate Oates. And a team a lot of people are going to have highly rated, probably be predicted to win the SEC by many next basketball season. And look, after making a Final Four run, maybe there's Alabama fans thinking, hey, let's go even further. Let's win a national championship. So we will talk about that. We will get into Alabama football with Joe. We will talk about a new quarterback signing for the 2025 class. Well, not signing, commitment. Let me correct myself there. 4-star out of Texas. Joe will break that down, and we'll look at the team, talk about Coach DeBoer so far in his tenure there at Alabama. We'll talk Jalen Milroe. We'll talk the defense, and where should Alabama rank among the other SEC powers? We will talk about that and much, much more, and I'll kind of get into some other sports topics after that comment. All righty, we're in June, and it's time to kick off our series where we preview as many Southeastern college football teams as humanly possible. And we're going to start off with the Crimson Tide there in Alabama. And joining me today is Joe Gaither. He covers Alabama for Bama Central. You can also check out his show, the Joe Gaither Show, going pretty much every single day. And also, if you're a Chicago Bears fan, he's on that pod as well, Believe in Monsters. But Joe, appreciate you coming on to talk about the Tide.
Thanks so much for having me, Phillip. I'm excited about it. What are we, 98 days, 97 days away from Alabama getting started? So it's going to be here before we know it.
You say June, you're saying, man, it's so far away, but it's really not because, and especially, I think June is the worst month of the calendar if you're just a college football fan, because we don't really get a whole lot of news this month, but then next month when July hits, media days for all the conferences, it's really like, okay, when that happens, we know we're close. I mean, outside of the magazines coming out right now, we pretty much, we don't have a lot going on, but yeah, it is an exciting time because, again, it's closer than people think.
100%. The summer enrollees, we got into Tuscaloosa last week, really right after Memorial Day. And so while there's not any news really happening, the summer camps and the workouts are starting to crank up. So you're starting to get a feel and starting to get excited. If the heat would calm down in Alabama, which it won't, then it'd be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Living in this state, everybody says, well, summer hasn't started yet. No, it started for us like a month ago. It's just, you kind of hope that when it does rain, maybe to cool it off for a little bit, get a reprieve. But yeah, it is hot this time of year here in Alabama. And we talked about football there a little bit, but I did want to talk some basketball with you. Big news last week, Mark Sears coming back. This is thing we all talk about the impact of NIL. We're in this state, we talk football. Basketball, I think a cool thing about NIL, we're getting a lot of guys that in the past, they would have went to the NBA, potential second round picks, or they just would have been a tryout or sign on to a G League team. But now we're getting players coming back for another year. I still remember a couple years ago, Kentucky, Oscar Tshiebwe was a great example. Probably second round pick. He goes back to Kentucky. We see it with the other schools, say, Auburn, Janai Broome coming back, and we see Mark Sears. Just with this team and everything they've got on this team, what Nate Oates has done in the portal, getting Aiden Holloway transfer from Auburn, adding big. You got Grant Nelson coming back, a loaded roster. But how big just getting Mark Sears to come back, your leader of your team?
Well, everything I think kind of hinges around the point guard in college basketball. Yeah, the big and the defense is very important. You got to have good shooting, but having the experience that Mark Sears brings back to the roster, I think is invaluable. Yeah, you might have gotten a better guard somewhere. I mean, more talented. No, Mark Sears is going to return and basically be the favorite for SEC Player of the Year. And really, with a third strong season, could cement himself as a top 2, top 3 player in Alabama basketball's history. He's never going to be considered maybe as talented as maybe a Brandon Miller, Antonio McDyess, or some of the other great players, but his longevity and consistency, and really the way that they have won at such a high level since he's been at the capstone, I think might propel him into that top 3 all-time player at Alabama. So to get a player like that back this year for Alabama, it's invaluable. You're hearing numbers and NIL numbers, maybe upwards to $800,000, and I think it's worth every single penny for what he's going to be able to bring. You look at Nate Oates, the schedule that he's putting together is another beast of a schedule, and so you're going to need that senior leader who's driving the team day in and day out, and who says, "Oh, I know what it takes to get to a Final Four. Just ride with me and follow me, and we'll have a strong year."
Yeah, you just look at the great teams that have won championships or made deep runs in the tournament. They have that leadership at point guard. That's usually where your leader is at, especially now in the sport. Aiden Holloway coming over from Auburn. How do you see him fitting in with the rotation there?
Well, I think he's going to get a lot of minutes. I mean, you saw right after Mark Sears returned, a lot of the Auburn faithful saying, "Oh, he's going to find out what it means to be sold a dream," kind of hearkening back to his comments about Bruce Pearl. But I think that he didn't come to Tuscaloosa to be the starting point guard. I think that was pretty well laid out to him by the staff, that Mark Sears has a really good shot to come back. You sure you want to come? Here's what we can offer you. I think that he's going to find himself playing real good number 2 minutes. And really, honestly, I think there's going to be times this year where Mark Sears and Aiden Holloway are both on the floor at the same time. The thing that's going to elevate Aiden Holloway will be the shot selection. I think that he's going to be coached a little bit better on where to be taking his shots. And also, I don't think he's going to have to be the generator of the offense like he kind of was at Auburn last year. There was different points in different games where he had a lot of pressure on himself to produce. And I don't know that pressure is going to be there in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I mean, we always know he's a really good player. He was a 5-star for a reason. Just sometimes you go somewhere and it's not a fit. What they want out of him at Auburn is maybe not a best fit for him. Go to Alabama, because he does have the ability to knock down shots. I mean, we've seen that at times at Auburn last year. So it's one of the things. It is going to add. It does add to the rivalry, though. It's going to make it fun when Alabama and Auburn, especially when Alabama goes to Auburn. But it does make the rivalry fun. And, that's what we love about college sports, right?
Oh, man, the rivalry is going to be even more intense next year. The game down there in Neville Arena, it's going to – the roof might come off that place because, look, while I'm more on the Alabama side, going over to Neville Arena, that's one of the most fun places to watch a basketball game, and the intensity in that place for when Alabama gets in there, and particularly directed at Aiden Holloway, it's going to be otherworldly, and I hope to experience it next year.
So let's jump into football. And actually, as we're recording this on a Tuesday evening, we got a little news for Alabama for the 2025 recruiting class. Quarterback Keelan Russell, as I said, in the class of 2025, 4-star out of Texas. You talked about this on your show on Tuesday, but what are the Crimson Tide getting in Keelan Russell?
I think they're getting a prospect that's that Alabama fans are going to love, first off. And it's huge for Kalen DeBoer to get his first quarterback in the class, and really the first quarterback commit since he's taken over here at Alabama. You look at his measurables, 6'3", 175, and you're like, ooh, you need to put on some weight. And yes, he will need to put on some weight when he comes to Alabama. But you look at the quarterback pipeline and kind of what's going on. You're going to get Jalen Milroe for another year. You're likely going to get Ty Simpson for 1, maybe 2 years. So he's going to have time to put on some weight. His numbers, I mean, 6A high school football in Texas is not Pop Warner. So he threw for 3,400 yards as a junior. He threw for 2,700 yards as a sophomore. So he's been leading the team, Duncanville High School in Texas, 6A high school, for the last 2 years, and won 2 state championships. I think that he's got some athleticism, but he'd rather throw than run. I think he moves to pass, which you're seeing is kind of the newer trend in dual threat quarterbacks. I think he's going to fit in really nicely in the Kalen DeBoer system because of his ability to throw the ball down the field. And you saw what Michael Penix did in the Washington system over the last 2 years. And while it might be it might be too much to say, oh, it's going to be like Michael Penix, I think there's some similarities there.
Yeah, absolutely. You can tell just with Kalen DeBoer, he wants to push the ball down the field to his wide receivers. And they got just to the current team. And, obviously last week was SEC spring meetings and just kind of looking over a few things that Kalen DeBoer talked about. He talked about the roster limitation of walk-ons, 8 or 9 conference games. Of course, where they were coming from in the Pac-12, they played 9 of them. And also just, there's more room for error in the college football playoff. Obviously replacing Nick Saban. Any of the comments or anything that Coach DeBoer said last week really caught your attention?
The biggest thing for me is the walk-ons. While people see 85 as the scholarship limit and see it as kind of the roster limit, they say, oh, well, the NFL has 53, so that's fine. That's true. The NFL has 53 on game day, but right now the NFL during the summer is rocking with 90. They've got a 90-man roster, and they got to cut it down by the time the first game rolls around. It's very important, I think, to have these walk-ons. And while not all of them get any publicity, and it's very rare that some of them even get to play, I think it really helps the team operate full practices. And while I think that Kalen DeBoer has shown over the course of his career, coming from Sioux Falls to Indiana to Fresno State, he's been to places where the resources aren't that good and where maybe, okay, these walk-ons aren't as valuable or we don't have as many walk-ons. So like Sioux Falls, I mean, goodness gracious, no scholarships at that level. So you have to work with different numbers. I think he'll be able to work with whatever the number comes out. But for the SEC, I would just be personally sad to see the walk-ons eliminated because I think that while some schools might use it to put some legacy players through the program or put some boosters' children through the program, I think that at least at Alabama, you've seen some walk-ons play well and either play at Alabama or transfer to small schools and get scholarships. I think it's an important I think the walk-on has an important place in college football.
Yeah, I've heard this say too, practice. I mean, having those guys too, I mean, they're a big part of the preparation for an upcoming opponent. Those players, we've heard how many times a walk-on quarterback mimicking the other team's quarterback, stuff like that. Very, very important on that side of things too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm thinking about you think about right here in Tuscaloosa, you have a couple of walk-ons that came from Tuscaloosa Academy who are now working in the football office. You have right here in Tuscaloosa, Sawyer Dearman walked on, and now he has a scholarship out at San Jose State. It can be a place where you are continuing to develop your career, and maybe you land somewhere else, and which is fine. They don't have to get on the field right here at Alabama. But you think about Rashad Johnson in Coach Saban's early time was a walk-on, and that's how he got his scholarship. Levi Wallace was a walk-on, earned himself a scholarship, and now he's in the NFL. So I think you're eliminating opportunities if you restrict or eliminate the walk-on altogether.
And it is so cool on social media when we get to see a walk-on get that scholarship when they're either in the locker room or on the field after the game. I know they did something like that with Troy last year after the game on the field. Again, other teams do it in the locker room. It's so cool to see that moment because you always see the rest of the team just so happy and they just celebrate that moment. And I don't want to see that go away, Joe. I think that's one of the best things in college sports.
Absolutely. You live for the feel-good moments. I mean, they don't happen all the time, but for somebody who is paying their own way to basically, I mean, that's right here in Alabama, what's in-state tuition, $35,000, $40,000. That's a huge accomplishment and a huge burden lifted off of the player when they get that scholarship. So I think it's a really, really big deal.
So obviously has not actually coached a game yet, but Kalen DeBoer, how would you grade him so far as Alabama's head coach?
Without coaching a game so far, I mean, I would grade him. I mean, I don't want to say 99 and A plus, but I'd give him an A because what more could you want? He has embraced Nick Saban's some kind of philosophies and tinkered just a little bit. There's been small changes, but none of the changes have been, throw out everything that Nick Saban ever did. It's just been small adjustments, and it has felt like a small step. And this is not a knock on Coach Saban and his philosophy, but it's felt like a small step forward into modern college football. You've got music playing at practice. You've got more players and more assistant coaches available to the media. And really, you look at just the media in general, his wide open stance towards, you got the popular podcast from Birmingham going in and having their show right there in the Malmore Center. I think that he's really opened up the facility, and I think he's taking the program into modern age. I mean, you look at Courtney Morgan, who had heard of a general manager before Kalen DeBoer comes and gets hired, and now Courtney Morgan basically runs the entire recruiting department and lets Kalen DeBoer focus on football. You think about it 6 months ago, you would have loved to have had a general manager position, and Coach Saban didn't quite have that because he didn't want it. I think that some of the tinkering that Kalen DeBoer has done will serve as a huge improvement for Alabama football.
Yeah, he didn't go Ray Perkins like he did when he replaced the Bear and just tear everything down. The younger audience will not know that reference, but if we have any older Alabama fans or just historians on the football program, they'll know that
the tower's still up.
Yeah, there you go. If this was Ray Perkins 2.0, that would not be happening. But the cool thing I think with this upcoming season for Alabama, it almost feels like there's a lot of unknowns. We know the players, most of them. Yeah, obviously, a lot of really great players still at university. We know Kalen DeBoer is a really good coach. I mean, he's won everywhere he's gone, but still, we just don't know what it's going to look like. I think that's an exciting part about if you're an Alabama fan or just a college football fan in general. But as we kind of move into looking ahead to the 2024 season, what's the biggest storyline? What's the biggest question for this team you see?
Right now, I think the biggest question mark is going to be Jalen Milroe, how he can operate the system. Mm-hmm. But I think that's not going to be as much of a question once you get into the first couple of weeks. All right, right now it's a question because we haven't seen it. Jalen Milroe, I think, has the skill set to really threaten opposing defenses. And I think Kalen DeBoer has been pretty open about saying, we're going to have a system, but I'm also going to tailor my system to my players. So a lot of times, or there's a handful of times last year where I think that the offense wasn't exactly tailored to Jalen Milroe's skill sets. It was just, this is the Alabama offense, and you're going to fit into it. I think that Jalen Milroe is going to do a good bit more quarterback run. I think you're going to see a lot of pre-snap motion. People talk about how much Lane Kiffin revolutionized the Alabama offense, and Steve Sarkisian continued to further that along. I think that Kalen DeBoer is going to take that, 3 and 4 steps further. I'm really, really excited about Jeremy Bernard being the wide receiver. I think that Alabama has really gone without a wide receiver one since the Jamison Williams, John Mechie year. What was that, 21? And so you've gone 2 years without a legitimate wide receiver one. You've had good receivers, but not somebody who can really command all the attention of a secondary. I think Jeremy Bernard has a lot of potential to do that. And if he does do that, you're going to see guys like Kendrick Law and Kobe Prentice really find themselves in smaller roles, but every time they get the ball, because of the wide open nature, I think they're going to be really, really effective. I'm really excited to see just how the offense operates as a whole. Really, on the offensive side, it's going to be the center. You saw Parker Brailsford transfer in, but then never really join the team. Kalen DeBoer has said, I'm confident that he will join the team, and it seems like he has joined the team thus far now that summer has started. But what's your confidence level in Parker Brailsford playing all 12 games? And if he isn't able to play all 12 games or has any sort of an issue, will Gino Vandermark, the transfer from Michigan State, be the okay plug-and-play second-team center? I think that becomes an issue. But really, it's just going to be a matter of getting into the games. And once it happens, I think Alabama fans will be very pleased with the offensive product.
And I think, too, when you look at with Kalen DeBoer, I think everybody just looks at Michael Penix, the receivers throwing the ball around. They run the ball too at Washington. They were a really good run team too. And you look at Justice Haynes and Jam Miller, coming in, they will be your featured backs. We saw Lil Jam Miller. I think some Alabama fans were hoping to see Justice Haynes a little bit more last year after the previous spring game, but still, when you see those two backs, how you see them fitting in with the DeBoer offense.
And I think you're going to see some Richard Young as well. The other 5-star was a freshman. Now he's a redshirt freshman. Didn't play really at all. I'm with you. Towards the latter part of the year, I thought, okay, here's the time to break out Justice Haynes and really hurt some of these opposing defenses with a player who's fresh. That's what's going to be the beauty of it. I think that Kalen DeBoer has been through so many different systems and so many different players and skill sets from Sioux Falls all the way through Washington that maybe there's some recency bias watching that Washington offense. And yeah, it was tailored to its wide receivers, Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, and their, great ability to throw the ball down the field. But those guys, Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, they're going to be really, really it's a talented tandem, and so I think it's going to make it very difficult on defenses to decide. Okay, do we stack the box and make Jalen Milroe throw the ball down the field? People can talk about Jalen Milroe's throwing ability all they want, but what he did excel at was throwing the ball down the field last year. Yeah. So do you want to tempt him to do that and just live and die with Jalen Milroe throwing bombs on you, or do you try to sit it back and maybe force Jalen Milroe into a mistake, and okay, you live and die with whatever Jam and Justice are going to get? I think it's going to put some defenses into a real conundrum next season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you're right. I mean, one if it's not the best deep ball throwers in college football. Just work on that intermediate stuff, and then unstoppable at that point if he gets that. Defense, real quickly, and I'm really excited to see with Kane Womack. I think he did a fantastic job as head coach at South Alabama. We know what he's capable of as defense coordinator. I guess, when you look at the defense, the biggest question, the secondary, so many players they lost through the transfer portal after Nick Saban retired and all that stuff, and also through the draft too as well. How do you see that group shoring up as we get going into fall camp?
Well, I think it's going to be – I'm really concerned about the interior linebackers, not Deontay Lawson and Jihad Campbell, but if they get hurt, if one of them gets hurt, which happened last year frequently. Deontay Lawson was in and out of the lineup, and same with Jihad Campbell, but you had Tresman Marshall. Who's going to be that third linebacker if either of those guys are unable to play all 12 games? I think that becomes an issue for Alabama. Secondary-wise, you do have a lot of fresh faces and a lot of new faces, but the talent is, they're dripping with talent. And so you really look at Malachi Moore and say, Malachi, you want to be a coach on the field? You remember Nick Saban last year basically crediting Malachi all the time about, he gets the secondary set. He gets everybody on the same page. So if Malachi really embraces, and I have no reason to doubt that he won't, I think he will become, continue in his leadership role back there. If Malachi can keep the back end set, hey, we're running cover 4, we're running cover 6, we're running cover 3, whatever the case may be, whatever the coverage is, keep everybody on the same page. And so if you're wrong, well, we're all wrong together, and that won't hurt as bad. I think that Malachi becomes an extremely, extremely important player. And he's another one that sometimes he got hurt he missed 2 games last season. And so his health, I think, is very, very important. You see Keon Sabb transfer from Michigan, and you've heard a lot of really good things about him. And you got the kid Red Morgan, who's out of Central Phoenix City, who's got a lot of love as a true freshman. But do you really want to rely on the true freshman to be lining folks up? I think Malachi becomes really, really important, even more important than he was last season, basically just because of the new system to say, okay, here's what we're running today, guys. And even if Malachi's wrong, everybody's wrong together. And I have confidence in Malachi doing that. But my biggest question is, okay, will he be healthy the whole 12 games? And if he is, then I think Alabama secondary will be fine. You got Damani Jackson, and you got the kid from Wake Forest, Deshaun Jones, who's come in. I think Deshaun Jones might serve as a kind of a placeholder as that second cornerback until one of these freshmen. These freshmen look incredible. Xavier Brown, Zay Mincy, and Jalen Mbakwe right there out of Birmingham. If Deshaun Jones can hold down that second corner position while those 3 freshmen are marinating, I think the talent in the secondary will basically flourish, and all these questions that we have right here in June might look silly in 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like, like we said at the top, this time of year, we'll talk about this stuff, and we're like, okay, that was not a worry at all for this team in that situation. Last question for you, and just kind of like I said, we're talking in June. We're still, a few months away from the season actually starting, but it really feels like when the SEC, everybody's pretty much got Georgia as the favorite, and then it seems like Texas, everybody's excited them coming to the conference, and then Ole Miss is another. They maybe the offseason darling for a lot of people. Where do you see Alabama? Where would you rank them at among the SEC?
Well, you look to the schedules, and I think that's really where everything kind of plays out, because I do think Alabama's in that class, in that Georgia, in that Texas Ole Miss class. That Ole Miss schedule is soft as a baby's bottom in comparison to the rest of the SEC. So you got Alabama, who's bringing Georgia in to open the SEC season, and that game's going to be absolutely massive. I think that Alabama is in that top 3 to 5 class, but it's going to be up to Kalen DeBoer and up to the team to navigate the schedule. You look at past the Georgia game and you see back-to-back weeks at Oklahoma and then Auburn coming to town. And while Auburn isn't maybe going to be it might not be a top half of the league, that as a back-to-back week is going to be 2 weeks is going to be very, very challenging in my opinion. And when you go out to Oklahoma, those guys are going to want to make a strong impression by beating Alabama their first time in a conference game. I think that Alabama's schedule is really challenging, but the rest of the whole league is. When you bring into Oklahoma and Texas and you mix up the East and West, I think it's going to make for a really fun season. If Kalen DeBoer, I kind of am feeling a 9-3 in my heart, and maybe that's not going to be good enough to get to an SEC championship, but I do think that puts them in prime position to be a top 12 team and be in that college football playoff.
And that's the exciting part, I think, about the playoff, the 12 team coming in. It's like now you've almost got mulligans early in the year. If you're just trying to figure some stuff out, you can lose a game or two, and particularly if you're an SEC or a Big Ten team, and you can still find your way in the playoffs. Hey, and a team of talent, Alabama, they could get hot at the end if something like that were to happen, or any team like that. So it was very exciting too, I think, from a fan standpoint. So a lot to be excited about. Joe, this has been a lot of fun having you on talking all things Crimson Tide basketball and football. If the listeners and viewers want to check out online, where can they find you on the work you're doing?
All my social medias are the same. I'm at Joe Gaither 6, so keep it nice and simple right there. I'm on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon, The Joe Gaither Show, and I work daily for BamaCentral.com. We're the Sports Illustrated affiliate for the Crimson Tide right here in Tuscaloosa. We got our friends Katie Windham and Blake Byler doing a lot of great work on the beat. I'm trying to keep up with them, so we're right there at BamaCentral.com.
All right, sounds good, Joe. Everybody give them a follow. Keep up all things Alabama athletics. And Joe, appreciate the time, and hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
96.9 The Legend is your connection to classic country legends. But Digio Strategies has other options too. News Talk 103.9 is your source for America's top news and entertainment shows, like Rick and Bubba in the morning, Glenn Beck from 9 till 11 a.m., and Clay Travis and Buck Sexton middays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. Sean Hannity, Lars Larson, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and others fill your day with the latest news and views from America's top conservative voices. America at Night and Coast to Coast AM keep you company and connected throughout the night. Plus, Fox News, the Alabama Radio Network, and Wiregrass Daily News keep you informed with national, international, state, and local news. And with more musical choices like All the Hits, 106.7 KMX, Today's Country, 95.5 WTVY, and Music 107.7. Digio Strategies gives you more choices and more variety. Listen on air, online, and on our apps. 96.9 The Legend is just the beginning.
All right, and once again, thanks to Joe Gaither for coming on the show. A lot of fun talking to Joe. First time having him on any of my podcasts or anything like that. So that was a lot of fun having him on the show. And then talking all things Alabama football and basketball. As we talked about the season, we're getting into June now, but the season is not as far away as we may think. Before we get out of here, just a few kind of news items happened the last couple of days. Brian Harston, back in the news, former Auburn head coach, of course, coached at Boise State. He coached a year and a half at Auburn. We can, I think, say that Brian Harston is the worst head coach in Auburn football history. I think that's fair to say. He took umbrage with some stuff online. So SEC Michael Bratton, put up on Twitter or X this week uh, a screenshot, a picture of something an anonymous coach said in the Athlon Sports College Football magazine. And one of the quotes, I think this is what set Brian Harsin off. They aren't close to the top end of the league, but they are absolutely better than the Brian Harsin rosters at offensive line and receiver, and probably defensive line too. So Brian Harsin reposted it, and he had this to say with it: coaches do not make these kind of comments. They focus on their programs and their problems only. If a coach wants to make a statement about another program, he will not hide behind anonymous. He will say it publicly and with authority. So apparently, Brian Harsin does not know how these magazines work. By the way, he is not coaching anywhere at the moment, so we'll have our second straight year without Brian Harsin being a head coach. There's nothing wrong with what the coach said. Maybe that's why Harsin took offense to it. Auburn was pitiful at offensive line. Receivers, awful. Defensive line regressed with him there. They had some good – Auburn had some talent his first year, but he ran off any good players that were there. I mean, that's why Hugh Freeze is there. Hugh Freeze is having to rebuild this thing just because how bad Brian Harsin did. I mean, Brian Harsin didn't get over himself. You're not that good of a coach. We all saw it. We all found out. I mean, you were kind of protected and things were easy for you at Boise, but once you got to big boy football, you couldn't hang. So, I mean, just go somewhere. I'm going to steal the line of Wiregrass legend, the late, great Phil Pellermore. Brian Harsin, would you just sit down? Sit down. Sit down. All right, so we got some cool things coming up this week, too. Not a lot of news going on right now in college football, to be honest. Not a lot of stuff going on. We're in that kind of slow time for news. The Women College World Series is going on this week. The final, Texas and Oklahoma will be playing. Yeah, I know this is still the Big 12. They're still part of it. They've got to be so mad, the people at the Big 12 seeing this. I mean, it had to be mad football season. Texas won the conference tournament championship. And then now you see Texas and Oklahoma playing it out here, pretty much on their way out the door of the Big 12 as they come to the SEC. Can the SEC claim this one as one of their titles? I know they can't. It'll still be a Big 12, but still kind of funny. But Texas and Oklahoma will play in the final series, the Women's College World Series. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday will be the games. All of them, 7 o'clock on ESPN. Of course, Friday's game 3, if necessary, if it's tied 1-1. We do have the NBA Finals getting started this week as well, finally, after a week off in no basketball. On Thursday night will be game 1 in Boston, 7:30 on ABC, and Sunday night in Boston, 7 o'clock on ABC between the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks. Of course, Dallas Mavericks beating Minnesota 4-1, and then Boston sweeping their opponent, the Indiana Pacers, 4-0. This is an intriguing situation because you have crossover with both these teams with some players. First, for the Celtics, this is a huge series. I mean, you say, well, they're in the finals. It's huge, but this is really huge for them. They've got to get a championship. All these Eastern Conference finals they've been in lately, they were in the finals 2 years ago. They lost to the Warriors. I feel like this is a must-win for the Celtics, and of course, there's been speculation ever since they won the Eastern Conference Finals. Does Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, do they get along? Do they like each other? Who's the best player on the Celtics? That's been a debate. And then, obviously, the return. Kyrie Irving coming back to Boston. He was on the Celtics several years ago. There is still some bad feelings over in Boston when it comes to Kyrie Irving. And then now everybody wants to make Luka the best player in basketball right now. And this is recency bias. It's all this is. The Joker is still the best player in the game, and he was a second half meltdown away from playing Dallas in the Western Conference Finals. I think we all feel like Denver would have been favored over Dallas. Luka's one of the best, probably top 5 players in the league, and the way he's been playing the playoffs, he's been playing out his mind. Without a doubt, he's one of the best players, but I think we need to pump the brakes on labeling him the best player in the game. I still think that title needs to go to Joker. But he's been playing great. And then you got the Kristaps Porzingis side. He will be returning. It's been 5 weeks since we've last seen him play for the Celtics. They pretty much went on this playoff run without their big man. He was with Dallas. And then Chandler Parsons, former NBA player, he has a podcast, and he's been talking about the relationship between Kristaps Porzingis and Luka. Luka kind of squashed it on Tuesday, excuse me. But yeah, so a lot of subplots here in this finals. I think I'm going to pick Dallas in 6. I think the way Luka's playing, I just settled that about him, but I think it's going to win, and some big questions are going to have to be answered for the Boston Celtics. People are still talking about the Caitlin Clark thing with Kennedy Carter from this past Saturday when the Indiana Fever defeated the Chicago Sky 71-70. Angel Reese, of course, is in there too. She's a rookie with the Chicago Sky. People remember her and Caitlin Clark, LSU and Iowa for the 2023 National Championship in women's basketball. Here's the thing about this. Now, Caitlin Carter talks a lot of trash, but still, at the end of the day, Kennedy Carter went beyond the line, which they did upgrade the foul. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it or seen people talk about it. I know a lot of people think the league should protect Caitlin Clark. I don't think it go that far. I think there would even be more, animosity toward her if that was the case. But still, at the end of the day, look, I look at it this way. They're all competitors. You want this rookie to have to prove herself among the best women basketball players in the world, without a doubt. No debate here. But there needs to be a little bit more. I'm not saying protection. You don't protect her, but still, I think that should have been called flagrant. I would like to see the Indiana Fever, her teammates, kind of stand up for her. I'm not saying they should have a fight or a problem. No, don't go that far, but just stand up for her a little bit in these situations. I haven't really felt like they've been doing that as well. And I can't figure it out with Angel Reese. Does she like Caitlin Clark? Does she not? Because one day it feels like she does, nothing. I don't know. So, and another piece of business, the Braves. They got a win over the Boston Red Sox on Tuesday night. I was happy about that as a Yankees fan. Yes, I'm in the South, but I'm a Yankees fan. But anytime I see the Red Sox lose, I am a happy camper. Max Fried had 13 strikeouts in the game. He is now 6-2 on the year as a starter. His previous high was 11 strikeouts. And Ozzy Albies, I knew I was going to get my tongue twisted. He had the tie-breaking 3-run homer in the 6th. It was 3-3 at the time. So the Braves get a big win there. All right, that's going to do it for the show. Be back on Friday, 7 a.m. on Friday to close things out. I'll have an interesting show coming your way that day. I'll just say this. We will be talking some UFL because the Birmingham Stallions are going for a three-peat. We're talking to a guy that covers the league on Friday's show to get us prepped and preview the UFL playoffs for this weekend, and we'll talk about some other stuff as well. You can follow me on social media at PJordanSCC. You can watch the show. There's 3 different really locations. Check it out. The Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel, the Phillip Jordan Sports Facebook page, and, of course, the Wiregrass Daily News Facebook page every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m. And you can check out the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts as well. And please, on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. And if you leave just 4 stars, you're just a straight-up hater. We'll be back on Friday to close out the week. Till next time.